Well, it's another podcast. Just call Picking It Out. Yeah, it's another podcast. It's called Picking It Out. Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff to talk about. And we're gonna be picking it out. Well, hey, y'all. Well, appreciate y'all tuning in to Picking It Out once again. And my name is Andrew Pope, and real excited this week. Man, I've been a fan of this guy for a long time. I think we kind of we've never met. We have a lot of mutual friends. I think we kind of look at things similarly. I've been a fan of his work, and I'm a fan of what I know about him as well as a person. So, real quick, let me mention this. We just got featured in this North Alabama magazine. The podcast just got featured. So that's really cool. Thanks to FTC for doing that. There's a whole write-up about the podcast and some guests we've had on, and so it's really cool. I think you can go online and check that out if you're not a customer of theirs. So thanks to FTC for that. And we got Mr. Glenn Jacobs with us here. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on, Andrew.
Or
any segment that starts with "Welcome to the podcast, y'all." I know I'm at home.
Yeah, I should have said Mayor Jacobs. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. It's all right. It's Glenn.
I told him a while ago, I said, man, I kind of feel underdressed, but I'm just kind of a musician, so I guess I can get away with stuff like that. Man, the one thing I think about when I think about you is any live wrestling event I ever went to in the early to mid 2000s, your damn pyro. I mean, that was by far the four things that come out from behind the ring post. That was by far the loudest freaking explosion, and you could feel it on your face. I mean, you must have had like your neck hair singed off from that over the years. That's insane.
It actually wasn't that bad. Like when I was in the ring and I was concentrating on what I was doing, it never bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I didn't know it was about to happen, or when someone else's pyro went off, that would always get me. But it was hot. I remember one time that they wanted to change my pyro, and they had like this idea of a wall of flames. They wanted me to come out and shoot off the initial explosion and the flame projectors. And then they wanted to have like a wall of basically natural gas or propane or whatever it was behind me for like 30 seconds. So we rehearsed it, and I'm there about 5 seconds. And I'm like, this ain't going to happen. All right, this is, I am burning up. You know, this is like a barbecue pit. So it got hot. We never did that entrance because I wasn't tough enough to actually go through with it.
Oh man, I've always wondered about that because you see several wrestlers kind of jump at certain times when their pyro goes off, even when they know it's coming.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, the announcers sitting there at the ring like Jim Ross and Lawler, I thought, man, they had to just scare the crap out of them every time.
I think it'd get everybody if you weren't ready for it.
Yeah, it was just a different time back then. You don't really have, pyro like that anymore. The latest thing I've been to was an AEW thing before COVID, all the COVID crap hit.
Sure.
Dustin Runnels invited us out there, me and my wife, and we went and checked out a show. She had never even been to a wrestling show.
Yeah.
So it was a really experience for her, but he introduced me to Arn Anderson, and it was pretty cool. Great talent they've got over there. I'm a fan of what AEW is doing.
Yeah, I think that having more competition in the space is very good. Of course, Dustin is a dear friend of mine. Known Arn for years. We go way back as well. I have all the respect in the world for him. Did your wife enjoy the show?
Oh yeah, she loved it, man. She loved it, and she didn't even know any of the characters or anything. She still loved it.
Yeah, it's the thing is that no matter who you are at an event that's done well, especially at the WWE event, I think, it's just the entire experience, the atmosphere, the show. So even if you aren't necessarily a fan of professional wrestling, if we're doing it right, the entertainment value is something that everybody enjoys.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you buy into what you're seeing, and for anybody that's never seen it live, it's really amazing. Just the sound. I remember the first time I went to a little house show, a little WCW house show. My uncle took me. He had won tickets off the radio, free tickets. And we went, and I remember the sound of bodies hitting that ring.
Yeah.
And it just sounded so much harder than it does on TV,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When you're there in person, it's a different experience altogether. There's the physicality and everything that goes along with that are much more intense than if you're just watching on TV.
Yeah. And you got started kind of professionally in 92, right?
Yeah, around that time. I think I started training in 1991, then worked a little while with some extremely low-level organizations, and then finally I made my way down to Puerto Rico. That was about 94, so I've been around a little while by then. But went to Puerto Rico, stayed there for almost a year, then ended up in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That's how I got to East Tennessee, and then that was 1995, and then went to WWE in the fall of that year.
Now, when you went to Smoky Mountain, had you met Jim Cornette?
Man, I never had. I'd heard about him, of course, and Jimmy's legendary character in the business. He's a genius.
He is.
But he's a mad scientist type genius too. I mean, he's when it comes to professional wrestling, he knows what makes people tick. He knows everything to do. But I mean, that's what he's focused on as well. And I got some great stories about Jim. He has an explosive temper that has never really mellowed, I think, through the years. And the first time you see it, it's just like what in the world is going on? But Jim Ross, who was the commentator at Smoky Mountain Wrestling when I was there, and Dutch Mantell, who was the booker in Puerto Rico, those are probably the three people that were most instrumental in getting me to WWE and giving me the tools I needed to be successful when I got there eventually. That took a little while too.
Now, how long when you were at Smoky Mountain did it take you to see that temper the first time?
About a month.
I would have said 2 weeks, but
it wasn't too long. When I first came in, I was working with Eddie Gilbert. We were a tag team. I'd met Eddie in Puerto Rico. For those folks that don't know, Eddie was a big star in WCW and NWA. And Dutch had brought him into Puerto Rico. I met him there. Eddie helped out with the booking and everything. And Dutch got me a job with Cornette. And Eddie also knew Cornette, so he decided that he would come along. And that was really great because I needed someone who could help me through that stuff. And I trusted Eddie. Well, we did one set of TV taping. So Jim would do like one, I guess it'd be 4 weeks of TV. So we did one set, 4 weeks of TV, and then the next week Eddie calls and he was going back to Puerto Rico. He had gotten the booking job in Puerto Rico. Dutch had left, so Eddie's going back to Puerto Rico, which kind of left me in a bit of a bind because we had 4 weeks of me and Eddie Gilbert as a tag team, and there was no Eddie Gilbert. So at the next TV taping, Jimmy Cornette had brought in Al Snow to be my tag team partner. Now, Al's a great talent, man, and Al's a very dear friend of mine. But at the time, Al had done a lot of non-televised stuff, okay? So we call him Outlaw, but there wasn't really. I mean, he worked for some high-level organizations, but wasn't necessarily at this point used to doing matches for TV and TV presentation. Right. And the first night, Al had also driven it was like in Hickory, North Carolina. He'd driven from Lima, Ohio, which is like a 10-hour drive. Okay. So Al shows up. He's supposed to have a match with George South. George South is also George's legendary, man, been in NWA for years. George is never like a big star, but always been around and very competent. So George and Al are supposed to go out and have a match, and Al's going to do all this stuff and show off and, impress the crowd with his athleticism. Well, instead of doing that, they go out and they do the handshake deal where Al's the bad guy and he's trying to get George to shake his hand. Well, they do this for like 5 minutes out of a 7-minute match. That's not great TV. No. Okay. So they get back and Cornette, we're all watching on a monitor, and Cornette says, guys, that wasn't really what I was looking for. I need some action. I'll do all your stuff, do all your flipping and flying and all that stuff. So George go back out and say, hey, Al Snow, you can't beat me twice in one night. I'll go out and then put together like a 3-minute match. And I just want it to be all high spots. It's just action, all this stuff going on. Right. So they go back out and do the deal, and they do like one move, and then that's the end of the match. Okay. So Cornette is sitting there, and you can see him start to like tremble. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt. And I knew something was up. I'd never seen this before. Everybody else starts leaving the room, but they're kind of ducking down like they're going through a combat zone. Okay. And you know how when people come out of a helicopter and under fire, and that's what everybody was doing. I was like, what is going on? All of a sudden, Cornette just goes ballistic and just starts screaming and yelling and throwing. I'm still like in the corner of the room. Now I'm kind of trapped, and I'm going, what in the world is going on? I mean, his face is red and it looks like he's about to explode. Then George and Al walk in the room, and Jim just looks at him and just like, bam, a switch flips. And he's just like, guys, that wasn't really what I wanted, but I'll make it work. And I was like, how do you go from being like a apoplectic mad 1 second to the next second, just like, it's okay. But that was Jimmy, man.
Yeah. I think his tales are legendary about losing his temper and then drive-throughs and backstage as well. He eventually, he would kind of be a champion for you also, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I first came to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Jim was splitting his time. He was running Smoky Mountain, but he was also in WWE with the Heavenly Bodies, Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey. And he was also working with WWE on their writing team. So he was really burning the candle at both ends. Then when I went to WWE, he basically moved up there full time. But yeah, he was a huge advocate of mine. And, especially that first year or so really helped me out. He was the person I would talk to. And I think a lot of the creative ideas, he was very involved in putting all that stuff together.
And when you debuted, your ring name was Angus King. Is that right?
That was I think I wrestled like under that name for like a year because I thought King was a cool name and I liked AC/DC and thought Angus Young was cool.
Angus Young,
yeah. And didn't have a cooler name than that.
You were.
It's funny now because Angus King is actually a senator from Maine and I think a former governor from Maine, but we're no relation.
Wow, how about that? That's kind of ironic. You talk about a coincidence.
Yeah.
you were also the Christmas creature.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. Kevin Lawler, who is Jerry Lawler's son, was doing a lot of stuff with Jerry at USWA as far as like the creative stuff. And just like Jerry's a great artist, he's a great comic book graphic artist. And Kevin's really good too. So Kevin has this idea, and I was just starting out, man. I just wanted to break doing something. He has this idea for at the holiday season for a villainous character, and Lawler was also always into like the movie monster wrestlers, right? So you'd have different like masked characters and all this stuff in Memphis all the time. So anyway, Kevin had this idea for the Christmas creature, who is an evil Christmas themed monster, basically. And the best way to describe it, it looked like the Swamp Thing with flashing lights, okay? Because it was like it was this green suit with garland, and my mom made it, okay? So my mom did this whole thing, but it was a technological marvel because she integrated Christmas lights into it, okay? So it had a battery pack, and everybody talks about Chris Jericho and, his jacket with the lights on it, right? I was way ahead of the time. And actually, my mom actually made me a suit that had integrated lights in it. But that thing only lasted, it was 2 or 3 weeks. But it did allow me, to get down there to work a little bit with Lawler and, to kind of get my foot in the Memphis territory.
Yeah. What'd you think about working with Jerry?
Man, Jerry's another person that I owe a lot to. He was very influential in my early career and just helped me out a lot. And, of course, even to this day, he is the king of Memphis. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Sure.
When we were at our height in WWE, and you have The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker, but when we were in Memphis, it was still Jerry Lawler that always got the best response from the crowd, which was amazing when you had these other like huge superstars, and Lawler was still the man in Memphis. Yeah.
Wrestling fans are just, there's like a respect level that just never goes away. And they're so loyal to, it's really amazing.
There really is. And I've been very fortunate to see that throughout my career, especially as I got to the latter stages of my career. And, it was like, I always felt like people appreciated me a lot more at the end when I wasn't that good, as opposed to when I was really good starting out. But it's just that, I think that being there night after night all the time, and building, I guess, building equity with the fan base is the best way to put it.
Right. And you actually wrestled Sting at some point on WCW Saturday Night, one time.
Yeah, I did one show with WCW. That's the only thing I ever did with them, and it was just a match against Sting. And he was actually a great guy. He treated me really well. Which he didn't have to do. He could have just beat me up, and he didn't. And so I've always thought a lot of him for that reason. Of course, he came to WWE much later and got to know him better, and he's a real stand-up dude. But a lot of times when you're in that situation where I was, someone coming in, you're just a job guy, no one knows you, and you're working with a guy like Sting. What's that? He could have just done whatever he wanted and beat me up and had the match over in a minute. And he actually went out there and we had a pretty decent match for my standards anyway. I always really appreciated that about
it. Was this like an audition or a tryout for WCW, or how'd that come about?
No, I was just starting out, just trying to get any sort of work that I could. And it never went anywhere. That was literally the only contact I ever had with WCW.
Wow. How did that come about? Did they invite you?
There was, I don't know if you remember Rip Rogers.
I've heard that name.
Rip was he was booking what we call extras. And I knew him. He said, "Hey, you want to go down and do a couple shows for WCW. I was like, yeah, sure, man. So that was basically it.
That's pretty cool. And is that the only time you ever worked with Sting?
No. When he came to WWE, we didn't have any matches, but we did some stuff. We're in the ring at the same time.
Yeah. But that's the only singles match you've ever had with him.
Yeah. Yes.
That's pretty cool. A lot of people probably don't realize that. So you go back and
then it's funny too, of course, because when he came, that was when he was like Sting with the howl and the
face paint, the colorful.
Back in 1993 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was whatever I was, and then everybody remembers Kane, of course, with the mask and all the stuff. By the time he got to WWE, he was Sting with the black and white face paint, completely different than what he was back then. I was corporate Kane. I wasn't even Kane anymore.
Right.
So it was a lot different. The various, I guess, incarnations that we had gone through by the time we finally did anything again.
Well, who was your, did you watch wrestling as a kid, and who was your guy?
Yeah, I grew up in Northeast Missouri, about an hour and a half north of St. Louis. We did not have cable TV, grew up on a farm. So if the wind was blowing correctly on a Saturday night, I would watch All-Star Wrestling out of Kansas City. It's a promotion owned by Bob Geigel. The main guy was Bulldog Bob Brown. He was a bad guy. Then you had Ray Candy, who was one of the top good guys. Bruiser Bob Sweetan. Sometimes Harley Race would come through. Harley Race would actually buy the territory many years later. It would, people that no one knew unless you were, watched that particular territory. But once a month, we'd go down to my grandmother's house and visit her. And on Saturday mornings, you had wrestling at the Chase in St. Louis, which was the biggest show in the country. I mean, it was, St. Louis at the time was the mecca of professional wrestling. So when I was down there, I'd get to see everybody, man. I get to see like Fritz Von Erich and Harley Race, and I just forget all the huge stars. One thing that's really cool that just happened to me recently. When I was 6 years old, actually, do you remember Baron Von Raschke?
Yeah.
Okay. So Baron Von Raschke scared me so badly that I had to turn off the TV because, here he is and he's bald headed and he looks a little like Freddy Krueger and he just does the thing with the German accent. And he's like, the claw will get them all. What was really cool was my last birthday in April, a friend of mine ran into the Baron, who is still alive and with us, and he cut a promo about me doing the same thing and posted it on Twitter. Yeah, that was about the coolest thing ever, man.
Oh, that's cool. I gotta go check that out. That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Oh man, what a time to be alive. So many. I had Gerald Briscoe on, and I had Dallas Page on.
Yeah.
And, even Eric, talked about going to matches when he was young, him and his brother, and just what a time to be. I feel like there was something in your generation of wrestlers and entertainers that just resonated with those guys. I mean, those were, Harley Race. I mean, you talk about a tough son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was convinced, when I was a young man, I was convinced that Harley Race and Arn Anderson, they were the two toughest people on this planet, right? Like if you walked into a bar and you saw either one of them in there, you just turn around and walk back out. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think too, especially when WWE would, really take off, it's like I think professional wrestlers are the closest thing there are to real life superheroes especially for kids, and it's literally like watching the Avengers in a ring, watching an actual superhero showdown come to life or something like that.
Sure.
I don't know if it's necessarily so much like that anymore, but like I remember when I was a kid, man, I never met Andre the Giant. Okay. And I just remember hearing these stories, and I had a friend that went to a match and Andre was there. He was like, when Andre ran across the ring and hit the ropes, the entire ring would move.
Yeah.
It's just stuff like that, and these characters which were literally larger than life, but they were come to life, and I think that's a lot of the allure of the whole thing, especially back in the day, was, you just had these characters that were just like I said, they were like superheroes or something that were real life.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, I remember, of course, when I was a kid, it was Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and, it was kind of the cartoon era, but it was almost like comic book characters and superheroes and villains. And, I like the villains, a lot of the villains just as much. And then I feel like in the 90s, it got a lot darker with the Sting, the Crow deal that they did with Sting, which was genius.
Yeah.
And Undertaker and your character. I mean, it was dark characters, but it was also, it was a cool factor to it,
Oh yeah. And then even Austin was an anti-hero.
Oh yeah.
He was not, I mean, he was a good guy, but he wasn't, his character wasn't a good guy.
True.
But he was the dude that he was the dude that the rest of America wanted to be, that tell his boss to shove it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think that in a lot of ways, that wrestling is a reflection of society. It has to be.
Yeah.
And I think about when I was younger and Hogan, and at this point I was a grown man, so it may not be cool to say this, but still, I remember one time I'm watching WWE, and this was when Sergeant Slaughter, had joined with General Anad, and it's during the Iraqi War, and Hogan's fighting off by himself, and they get him down there, beating him up, and Hogan's starting to do the Hulkamania thing and the Hulk up thing, and Gorilla Monsoon's like, they can't let him up, because if Hogan gets back to his feet, right about that time Hogan gets to his feet, and just starts cleaning house, and I got goosebumps watching it, even though it was ridiculous, but it's just stuff like that, right? That was just, so cool. And then of course with like Sergeant Slaughter, who's another friend of mine, to think here you have Sergeant Slaughter, who is like the ultimate American hero, and he turns and he joins with the bad guys and, up against Hogan. It's just good stuff.
Yeah, it really is. You must have been so excited and just feel like it was such a huge blessing when you actually came to WWF then. But WWE, you remember like what you felt when you actually got that opportunity?
When I first came in, I was scared to death because I'd just been watching these people on TV, and I was a huge fan myself, and I didn't think I belonged there. And, that's why my first couple characters failed, because I didn't have what it took to make them be successful. But then when the Kane character came along, when that was presented to me, I knew that I knew what I had to do. I felt like I did belong. And I was like, man, this is the greatest opportunity that anyone could ever get. I'm going to be going up against The Undertaker. This whole story, the Kane is like the equal of The Undertaker, which no one had ever been. And you have this tremendous backstory. I think it's the best piece of kind of mythological storytelling WWE's ever done. So I was really excited about the Kane character. On the one hand, because I figured it was a can't miss character, but also I knew that if it did miss, that wouldn't be in WWE anymore if that happened. So I had to make that one work.
Yeah. Was that a Vince thing? The Kane character idea? Or was that a Bruce Pritchard or?
It was a combination of people, and a lot of stuff is, and initially they wanted to just hotshot the whole thing. What had happened was Undertaker needed an opponent for a pay-per-view. And that's when they came up with this idea. They're like, well, Glenn's not doing anything. We can put him under a mask and he can have a match with Undertaker. It'll be fine. And, so then they kind of came up with the story of why. And then that Vince liked it so much. It's like, we're not going to waste this on one match, when we can get like much more. It turned out they got 30 years out of it as opposed to one match. But still, we can get so much more out of it. And that's when they really started, just delving into, I think, all the, just all the stuff. And, the character development and the real story behind the Kane character, and a lot too behind the Undertaker character.
Yeah. I was going to say that had, like you said, that had never been done, and I feel like the audience really responded strong at an early stage in that, because it was lucky enough probably to be involved with Undertaker, and he was just everybody. I mean, who didn't love the Undertaker? When that bell went off and the lights went down, I mean, people went berserk, I was just super fortunate. I was blessed to be put in that position, and that gave the Kane character, instant credibility. I mean, you go out and drop the Undertaker, it's like you basically knocking out Mike Tyson with one punch, right?
So that was a huge deal.
You still stay in touch with Mark?
Oh yeah. Of course, we've done some stuff with WWE. We just had the A&E Lost Treasures thing and the documentaries. Yeah. So we've actually got to work together a little bit, even after we're both not necessarily active in WWE in the ring anymore.
Right.
But I talk to him. I talk to him every once in a while. Mostly it's something funny happens, and I got to make a joke about something, so I'll shoot him a text.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But I think he's really enjoying life. He's in a good place. So
he deserves it. Both y'all do. You deserve it too. One thing I always wondered too, this is kind of jumping around. When you did the Diesel spoof, had you been friendly with Kevin Nash at all before that? Did you know him? And did you kind of give him a heads up? Hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what they want me to do. Or
no, I knew Kevin. I mean, I didn't know him that well. He'd been around. We've been in WWE together before he left for WCW.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't. Well, actually, I couldn't because it was a surprise.
Yeah.
So
that's what I figured.
Couldn't. But yeah, and I don't think we've ever really even talked about it. It's just one of those things that, it was, and the thing was, it wasn't making fun of him or anything like that, So, and I hope people don't think that it was, it was legitimate. It was a legitimate storyline on its own, and revolved a lot around Jim Ross. But it wasn't making fun of Kevin and Scott by any stretch of the imagination.
And that was such a time in the wrestling business right then when him and Scott went to WCW. I watched WCW from 96 probably all the way to, religiously watched it, as in didn't miss anything from 96 to like 99, maybe kind of early 2000. Early 2000, I kind of flipped back and forth to see what y'all were doing. And, y'all were doing a lot smarter things at that time.
WCW, of course, was, they were killing us in the Monday Night Wars. And it's funny because people talk about the Monday Night Wars and it's such a great time. If you were actually if you were in WWE, it was not a great time because we were fighting for our lives, and it was like, if we lose and WWE goes out of business, we probably don't have jobs anymore. So for wrestling fans, it was awesome. For us, there was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was like once, and frankly, their show was better. You know, their production level was better. Just everything was better for a while. And then ours got a lot better. And then, of course, you know, Austin, everybody caught fire. And I think that the quality of our show quickly surpassed theirs, but they had so much momentum that they kept the ratings. And then finally one day there was a tip, and then it's like they fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
You know, it was like they just never recovered. And I thought their product got dramatically worse once that happened. And then there wasn't even, you know, it was like our show was so good, and theirs eventually got so bad that it was almost unwatchable.
Yeah, it really was. I had Eric on my very first episode, Bischoff.
Yeah.
I've known him for a few years. I know you know him also, and he, you know, he's talked about the AOL Time Warner thing and the merger and how he kind of was kind of kicked to the side a little bit at a time, and then eventually out.
Yeah. And, you know, Eric gets blamed for a lot of that.
He does.
I don't think, you know, the thing is there's an entertainment side that everybody sees in front of the camera, and then there's a lot of office stuff behind the scenes that people don't see.
Sure.
And it's same in WWE, you know, and like Eric gets blamed for that stuff, but there was things going on behind the scenes that I don't think he had control over.
Right.
That had a huge impact on what was going on in front of the camera. So, you know, one thing that folks have to remember is it's a business,
yep.
You know, in the end. And sometimes as fans, we forget that, you know, and we just, oh, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And there are actually reasons why that happens. And there are reasons why the product isn't maybe where folks want it to be. And it's just, you know, it's just hard. But I always hate that Eric takes the fall for what happened, because he's another guy. He's a friend of mine, and I don't think it's fair to blame it all on him by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Was you back then? Was you watching Nitro or anything? Did you pay any attention to what they were doing?
Yeah, I was. And like I said, you know, for a while I thought their show was better than ours. And then it just got to the point where I think one thing they did, you know, they went to that 3-hour format.
Yeah.
And they've done something which I kind of feel that WWE does too. You know, they just oversaturated the market. You know, They had like a 3-hour show and then a 2-hour show and then all this stuff going on. And it's really hard to create good, compelling content for that amount of programming. And frankly, I think WWE suffers that same problem sometimes.
You were on Smallville, on one episode of Smallville. John Schneider's a good friend of mine. He's recorded some of my songs on his albums. I wanted you to talk about working with him and your experience on that show.
Okay, yes. So I was on an episode called Combat, and I played a character. I think it was Titan, and the Smallville people discovered that there's like an intergalactic cage fighting thing going on, and Superboy, you know, infiltrates it and starts fighting all the. It was fights to the death too. I mean, it was the real deal. And so in the end, I had a great role, man, because Superman didn't take me out. I took myself out. I had like these horns, kind of like a little like Wolverine, except it was just one horn coming out of my hand, and I got impaled on my own horn. But one of the funny things that happened was in the big final fight scene between me and Tom Welling. And I will say this too. Everybody on that show was just awesome to work with. I mean, they're just, you know, really, really a lot of fun. I was only there 3 days, but it was great. So we're choreographing the final scene, and we got everything set up, and you shoot the master scene, which is like, you know, the far away, all the angles at once, so that they can do all the cutouts and all the close-ups and all this stuff. So we're going around, and it was like, it's about 3 or 4 minutes that we're, nonstop action. And Tom throws a punch. And now in wrestling, almost everybody's right-handed, right? So in wrestling, you sell a punch that's coming from the right, so you react to a punch coming from the right. Well, that's my instinct. Well, I forgot, and this is completely my fault, but I forgot. He was throwing the left. So he goes to throw the punch. I go to stick my head out, punch me right in the face.
Oh, man.
So we finished the scene, and he comes up to me. He's like, man, are you okay? He's like, that one cuts pretty good. I said, yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. And, of course, as soon as everybody turns around, I'm just like, oh, my God. I had a black eye. He punched me right in the cheek. Almost knocked me out, man.
Man.
So, but I can say that I took Superman's best punch, and I'm still
here. There you go.
It was a great time, man, and everybody was wonderful. They were it was a great crew.
That's cool, man. And now you're mayor. I mean, who would ever thunk it?
Yeah, I know.
That's so cool.
And it's amazing to me, but I feel like I've disappointed my mom. Because, I'm in the WWE Hall of Fame. I've done businesses. I've done all this stuff. And now people know me as a politician. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Mom, that your son became that. But it's okay. It's cool.
Well, you're a great American, and I appreciate everything you stand for, Glenn. Really do.
Well, man, I appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you so much, my friend.
It's good talking to you, man.
All right, you too, brother. Good luck with everything on your end, too, bud.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks, brother. Have a good one, bud.
See you.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time on Picking It Out.